The wine was still dripping from Daniel Cross's hair when the room went completely silent. 400 guests had been laughing, applauding, and raising crystal glasses only seconds earlier. Now every face in the ballroom was turned toward the billionaire CEO standing beneath a chandelier, his expensive black suit stained red from collar to waist. Across from him stood his own brother, Marcus, holding an empty wine bottle. Marcus wasn't laughing anymore. He looked terrified. Daniel slowly wiped the wine from his cheek. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten anyone. He simply looked at his brother and asked, "Why did you do that? Before we get into the story, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about betrayal, secrets, justice, and unexpected second chances, stay with us and consider subscribing, liking, and sharing." The gala was supposed to be the greatest night of Daniel Cross's career. At 47, Daniel had built Cross Meridian from a small logistics company into a global technology empire. That evening, he was preparing to announce a $2 billion acquisition that would push the company into a completely new market. Investors had flown in from 3 continents. Journalists waited outside. Government officials, celebrities, executives, and longtime employees filled the Grand Belmont ballroom. And Daniel had one person he trusted more than anyone. His younger brother, Marcus. Marcus had been beside him since the beginning. He had managed the company's charitable foundation, appeared beside Daniel at public events, and often reminded him that success meant nothing if family was forgotten. But over the previous 6 months, something had changed. Daniel had noticed missing documents. Strange payments. Meetings Marcus refused to explain. Whenever Daniel asked, Marcus smiled and said, "You worry too much." So Daniel had quietly ordered an internal audit. The results were disturbing. Millions of dollars had moved through a network of shell companies connected to a senior executive inside Cross Meridian. But Daniel still didn't know who was behind it. That night, just before the announcement, Daniel received a message from his chief financial officer. "We need to talk before you sign anything. It concerns Marcus." Daniel stared at the phone. Then Marcus walked onto the stage. He raised his glass. "To my brother," he said, smiling at the crowd. "The man who taught me that loyalty is everything." The guests applauded. Daniel stood beside him, uneasy. Marcus turned toward him. And then he poured the wine. The bottle emptied over Daniel's head. Gasps exploded across the ballroom. Daniel stood frozen. His wife, Elena, rushed toward him, but Daniel lifted one hand. "Wait." Marcus's face had gone pale. Then Daniel noticed something strange. Marcus wasn't looking at him. He was looking toward the large screens behind the stage. Daniel turned. The presentation had changed. Instead of the acquisition announcement, a financial document appeared on the screen. A list of transfers. Shell companies. Hidden accounts. And Daniel's signature. Whispers spread through the ballroom. Someone said, "He stole the money." Another guest murmured, "Is that why the acquisition was happening?" Daniel stared at the screen. His own signature appeared beneath a transfer authorizing $38 million. "I never signed that," he said. Marcus stepped closer. "You did," he whispered. Daniel looked at him. "No. I didn't." Then the ballroom doors opened. 3 federal investigators entered. The guests moved aside as they approached the stage. Daniel's stomach tightened. One investigator said, "Mr. Cross, we need you to come with us." The cameras outside immediately exploded with flashes. Within minutes, the story would be everywhere. But Daniel noticed Marcus had tears in his eyes. "Daniel," Marcus whispered, "you have to listen to me." "Not here." "I had no choice." Those 4 words stopped Daniel. No choice for what? Marcus glanced at the investigators. Then he said quietly, "The $2 billion deal is already gone." Daniel felt the room tilt beneath him. The acquisition partner had withdrawn. The deal that had taken 18 months to negotiate had collapsed before the announcement even began. But that wasn't the worst part. The next morning, Daniel learned that the board had scheduled an emergency meeting. By sunrise, 3 major investors had demanded his resignation. News channels called him a fraud. Social media called him a criminal. And someone had leaked the financial records to the press. Daniel spent the day locked inside his office, replaying the gala in his mind. The wine. The documents. Marcus's terrified expression. Then his assistant entered. "Sir, there's something you need to see." She placed a small envelope on his desk. Inside was a handwritten note. "Ask who benefits from the deal disappearing." Daniel read it twice. Then he opened the audit report. The shell companies weren't controlled by Marcus. They were controlled by Daniel's longtime chief operating officer, Victor Hale. Victor had been the person Daniel trusted to negotiate the $2 billion acquisition. And the moment the deal collapsed, Victor's private investment company stood to make nearly $600 million. Daniel finally understood. The scandal wasn't designed to steal Cross Meridian. It was designed to destroy Daniel's reputation, collapse the acquisition, and let someone else buy the company's damaged assets for a fraction of their value. But there was still one question. Why had Marcus poured the wine? Daniel found him that evening at their childhood home. Marcus opened the door and said nothing. Daniel walked inside. "You could have warned me." "I tried." "You humiliated me in front of 400 people." Marcus lowered his head. "I knew the room was wired for recording. Victor had planted evidence showing you approved the transfers. If I confronted him privately, he would destroy everything." Daniel stared at him. "So you created chaos." "I needed everyone watching." Marcus pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "I spilled the wine because I needed Victor's security team to leave the control room and come toward the stage. While they were distracted, someone copied the original transaction records." Daniel took the drive. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know who around you could be trusted." That answer hurt more than the wine had. The next day, Daniel gave the evidence to investigators. The original records proved the signatures had been forged. Security footage showed Victor meeting with the shell company owners. And the most damaging discovery came from a recording made during the gala. Victor was heard telling an associate, "Once Daniel is finished, the acquisition dies. Then we buy the pieces." The $2 billion deal had vanished because Victor had engineered its collapse. But Daniel wasn't finished. At the emergency board meeting, Victor walked in expecting Daniel to be removed. Instead, Daniel entered with Marcus beside him. The room went silent. Daniel placed the flash drive on the table. "You wanted my company," he said to Victor. "You should have tried earning it." Victor was arrested before the meeting ended. Weeks later, the investigation cleared Daniel completely. The acquisition partner returned to the negotiating table. But Daniel made one decision that surprised everyone. He refused to restore the deal on the original terms. Instead, he used the crisis to restructure Cross Meridian, remove executives who had ignored warning signs, and create an independent oversight board. As for Marcus, Daniel didn't immediately forgive him. Trust, once broken, didn't return because someone said sorry. It returned slowly. Over coffee. Over uncomfortable conversations. Over months of proving that loyalty was more than a word. 1 year later, Daniel hosted another gala. 400 guests filled the same ballroom. This time, Marcus stood beside him. Daniel raised a glass. Marcus looked nervous. Daniel smiled. "No wine bottles near me tonight," he joked. The room laughed. Then Daniel turned serious. "A year ago, I thought the worst thing that could happen to me was losing $2 billion. He looked at his brother. "I was wrong. The worst thing was discovering I had stopped asking who I could trust." He paused. "And the best thing was discovering that sometimes the person who hurts your pride is the same person trying to save your life's work." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Daniel lifted his glass. "To truth. To family. And to second chances that have to be earned." 400 glasses rose around the room. The deal had vanished. Daniel's reputation had nearly vanished with it. But in the end, he discovered something worth more than $2 billion. The truth had survived the betrayal, and so had the brother who refused to let him lose everything.